Her Holland on an overcast day. It was a high-stakes game, life or death. Were there any higher stakes? Perhaps if a person put up her soul, if she believed in that kind of thing, the possibility of keeping it or losing it would take the cake as the highest of all stakes. To lose one's life or keep it was a finite affair. When it was done, it was done. To lose one's soul or to save it, on the other hand, was a matter of eternal consequence. The soul, being immortal by definition, its ultimate disposition, positive or negative, would persist as an unfading consciousness, an echo that went on forever. But echo is the wrong way to put it. Echoes do not feel, and souls, as everyone knows, do. Souls cry out, they suffer, they are mournful, and also they sing, they fly, they glow, sometimes with colors, blue, celadon, noon sunshine yellow, dawn pink. The feet of souls can be put to the fire or dipped in a boiling vat, or worse. The spectral heads, necks, shoulders, and chests of such sinners might be so immersed, howls then rising in the fiery liquid like bubbles that pop with high-pitched hisses and squeals. She did not believe in souls, only earthly torment, and then nothing. So, life or death were indeed the most meaningful stakes for her. What was the wager, and who the contenders? She was a professor of philosophy at the time, now retired, and she was the victor, having lived to tell the tale, though she would never dare to do so. Having made it through the decades that followed till retirement, her name was and remains Natalie. To preserve her living anonymity, her last name must be kept a secret. He was not so lucky, if luck can be said to have played a role. Much like souls, luck is intangible and easier to believe in than pin down. But he believed in it, as most gamblers do, and that fact alone certainly figures. If he had not thought himself lucky, would he have ever made such a bet? He was Harold Smith Jones. We can reveal his name in full because his fate was reported, even if the conditions that allowed for it were not. It was the kind of story that did not resonate loudly, particularly in a city like New York, with its news cycles churning like an upset belly too filled up with bagels and lox and slices of pizza and caviar and champagne and black and white cookies. It was easy to miss the majority of what happened, and it was a given that most people, those not actually reading newspapers, had not seen the article or heard tell of the sad tale. He died by drowning in the East River, the tide rushing his sunken form toward Hell's Gate. Investigators determined it an accident, though, at the time, at least one police officer suspected foul play. They never guessed the truth, however, that this death was the immediate consequence of an unhappy roll of the dice. Having had a ringside seat to the bout, I was the only spectator and thus am privileged to know what all others but one do not. Yes, Natalie still remembers, though she pretends she doesn't. Almost daily upon waking, her sheets wrinkled and damp, down comforter on the floor or twisted between her long legs, she tells herself it never happened. It was a dream. What professor, after all, was ever involved in such a grotesque affair? But for me, The moment persists, eternally, just like a soul, and I do my best to ensure she does not forget. It is my duty. I am the salt in her chocolate that allows her to savor, by way of contrast, what she has, and to never take it for granted. Her study with old books and large desk, her tranquil home, her garden of tulips in spring and everlasting Eden rose that even now strangles the trellis by the back door. Besides, it would be unfair to the loser. At least, this is how I feel. I should also note, in full disclosure, that it was his idea, not hers. The whole matter instigated, moved forward, and propelled to that final resolution by the force of his determination, will, and most significantly, despair. He had nothing to lose. So he said. So he believed, up to the moment when he lost. And then he doubted. Only then did he wonder, am I so sad? After all, is my life indeed so pointless that its loss would be as nothing? The answer was a summons from the river for him, one who could not swim. Yes. Besides, he had no choice but to pay up. The game, for so it was, if of the most serious kind, was founded upon a premise to which they both subscribed. A foundation, rather, upon which both had built their lives. They were idea people, rather than sensualists, or feelings people. That is, they were among the ethereal, ivory tower crowd for whom the idea was everything, and so, good it was that they had the idea. Meaning, purpose derived from it. All decisions, all actions taken had their gestation there, including the one that led them to contend with one another as they had. The idea was this. The world of the mind was fine and good, but without real-world implications and consequences to go with their ideas, without chest-piercing stakes in the balance, none of it meant a damn. They were both depressed and lonely people they'd met online on a suicide chat page, and both earnestly questioned if life was worth living at all. Agreeing to their plan via email, the words a kind of contract on their shimmering, mirage-like screens, they would meet, no longer mere people of the word or idea, but of flesh, each to bring a pair of dice that would be given to the other, to ensure fairness and forestall any temptations toward dice loading. Like Harold, Natalie could not swim. They had each learned this fact about the other at their first online meeting when discussing most dreamed of death. Drowning was said to be pleasant, Natalie had offered, so long as panic could be kept at bay. Euphoric, he had agreed, as the air in one's lungs lost its ability to send oxygen to the blood, and vision began to sparkle at the edges, and the hum in one's head began to fill out all the empty spaces within, as a person became one with the universe. One with the universe, she had typed, as if in agreement. It was impossible for Harold to hear her mocking tone. A gamble to the death would reinvigorate their lives like a bolt of lightning to the head. These two Frankensteins with flesh but without spirit. To do this, and they noted the ironic paradox, one of them must die. I have suggested contest, bout, as if one or the other might have won by virtue of greater strength, skill, or cunning. But it was wrong to put it that way. The winner was to be determined by chance, a mighty arbiter, they agreed, that played a role in all things. And so, they met in the park beside the river, near 22nd Street. They looked together across at Greenpoint, Holland, on an overcast day. That's what it looked like to her, with its muted colors and church steeples sticking out above the clump of low-rise buildings on the waterfront, She had visited Amsterdam as a student, but hadn't been there in years. She knew the country and its landscapes and interiors and type of light and people better from paintings and museums and books than from any personal direct experience. Dark rooms with blushing women or peach-cheeked men, clinking pewter tankards of ale, jovial smiles on lips, matte black pit eyes, serene canal paintings with flat countenance buildings in the colors of clay, with moderately fanciful cornices like eyebrows, mysterious Vermeers, which featured contemplative individuals studying globes or knitting in quiet rooms alone. It was an indirect understanding she had, like so much else in her life. A phlegmatic people the Dutch were, she thought, slow, thoughtful, thick. Great engineers who refused to be washed away by the oceans of the world. But wouldn't they indeed be washed away one day, like everyone else? He held out a hand to her, dropping into her open palm a pair of green dice. Its pips white. She, in turn, gave him hers, a standard set. "Ladies first," he said, as they crouched over the flagstone pavement. The late August air was hot and humid. The kind of day, she thought, that made a person hate her body, skin at groin, burning from chafing and sweat, and long to lose it in the icy depths of the sea. Now and then her nostrils were invaded by sewage smell, concentrated rot of bananas and sour feces mixing with brackish air. That was the stench of living. She sucked it in, then gagged. She shook, then rolled 4 and 3. "You were lucky," he said. But she didn't feel lucky. They'd already agreed upon the rules. They were to alternate throws, first to 7-1, but the second roller had the chance to match. If she rolled 7, then he rolled 7, tie, begin again, snake eyes, lose. If she rolled 6, he rolled 7, then she rolled 6 again, or 5, or 4, or 3, or 2, or any other number but 7, the win was his. He rattled the dice. Like chipped bits of ankle bone or skull, she thought. He let them go. They danced over the bruise-colored stone. 4, and for a moment on its edge, in a vein or crevice of the pavement, 3, as if fate were at play and not chance. For only that moment, a snap of fleshless fingers, she questioned everything. Did she even exist? And then the world righted itself, or the wind blew, or a seagull cried, or a horn in the harbor at the bottom of the river honked, bellowed, groaned, and the die fell. 2. "You lose," she said. "Win or lose," he said with a smirk. "It's how you play the game." "You played well," she said. "Fantastic," he snarled. Then, calmer, "I'm a good loser." "Forget it," she said. "This was a bad idea." "Ideas aren't good or bad," he said. "This one was bad," she said. "Let's forget it." He sighed, smiled. She thought that he might kiss her. If he had, she would have let him. His determination and resolve, the way he looked watery death in the face, like Amsterdam, was sexy. "It's forgotten," he said. He gave her back her dice. She offered to him his own on 2 fingers, like cubes of sugar, but he no longer had a taste for sweet things, and did not take them. Putting up his hands instead, palms facing her, fingers spread. He stood. He throttled the railing, revving his engines. He jumped. The river pulled him out and swallowed him down, like a morsel that it had long expected. In her dreams, from the night that followed till now, I remind her. I paint a muted picture, a Holland in which the black waters are always rising, and she must see it one troubled sleep following the next, she must see it. Not his face, not the dice and their spots, but his hands, the palms. They have no lines. As if he'd had no love or life before him then, no love or life behind him. Only the plain page of the void, as if he'd never been.